Hello and welcome to Kamila Singh show. Yes, we haven't been sitting here for a while. We did the show in January, but it has been a while. Anyways, before we start the show, we like to acknowledge the land. It's Kwatland, Semiamu, Maskiam, and Kitsi Nation. We want to acknowledge the land that we are broadcasting from. And thank you for the people, the first people of this land, for being able to allow us to live, grow, laugh, and do enjoy life. Having said that, our panelists are back in the studios and we need to talk about a lot of things that are happening. First, the budget is coming out. But before we talk about the budget coming out, ladies, we have to acknowledge the death of, what's his name? Alexei. Yeah. And that is in the news everywhere. So, it's a very sad thing. It's a very sad day.
It's sad for democracy.
Yes.
Okay, I mean
that you cannot have a voice, right?
Yeah, he's in line with Martin Luther King,
Yeah.
Mahatma Gandhi. He returned to Russia knowing that once he lands, and I was watching on CNN, once he lands on the soil of Russia, he will be detained, and that exactly what happened after he was poisoned. So it's I was so heavy-hearted when, I heard his death. I knew he was in prison for a very long time. But, for such a man with democracy ideas, people, and then if you look at Russian people, they're not allowed to mourn for him or grieve for him or show respect by bringing
flowers and all
exactly,
that.
And they're being detained and held. And I'm thinking, what type of world are we living in?
True.
I think it's. I agree wholeheartedly, and it's scary because we see how more and more countries are doing these extrajudicial killings. Certainly, I think it's fair to say that due to the multiple poisonings, his prison conditions in that Arctic Circle. Prison labor camp, that he was murdered, essentially. But we see assassinations right here at home by extrajudicial kind of actions by other nations. You see a possible president of the United States speak to the reality of that being possible, and numerous other countries. So I think it's a scary time for all democracy.
Yes.
And certainly, I know that there are many people that believe in the cause, that will continue to fight no matter what. You see his wife speaking at the Munich conference, like the same day, or if not the next day, and you know that it will persist. They will persist, and one day Putin will be gone, and the hope is that those around him, notice that it's not the right way for Russia, for anyone to go. But I do think it's interesting to see how many governments and really individual people think that once they get in that seat of power, they can do whatever they want and murder people that all they want is peaceful coexistence.
Anyways, changing the subject, coming home to, we were going to talk, the budget is coming out, I think, end of this week or end of this month. I think there is a sitting, provincial government, and they're going to be putting out a budget that will last for a year before the next election. This is a budget for next election. So what's going to be in the budget and how is it going to be perceived by the people, all your voters? The biggest thing that I can talk about is Premier Eby talking about building homes for the middle class. I think once I found out that there is not enough homes for working poor who makes up to $84,000, they are doing it slowly, but that's not enough land, and he's not doing fast enough. Now he's thinking poor middle class are not able to afford housing. So he'll start building homes from 84,000 to 131,000 for one bedroom, and this is middle class. And from 132 to 191, two bedrooms for the middle class. Government are not there to build homes. The builders build home. Why is this government getting into the business of building homes and leaving the working class poor still behind? If there is home for all working class poor, I have no issue with that. But we are still struggling. People are still struggling to be homeless. So how do you justify that?
When I heard that, unlike you, I just thought that Premier E.B. was being supportive because at the moment, people cannot even put a down deposit
Down
for
payment.
a home that they potentially want to own. And I think from what I have listened and reviewed, he is trying to give them a pathway and a hope to say if your government is listening, that your government knows your struggles, and we are here to help. And I was encouraged that not many premiers would do that, and not many premiers would walk into their citizens' footsteps to follow where they are and what struggles they are encountering. So to me, it was, quite refreshing and quite enlightening that he was doing this. And I think there is so much response out there about what he is proposing that people think that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, that finally they might get an ownership of a small place to say it is their own.
Yeah,
don't-
sorry, go ahead.
I don't think it's about ownership. It's just the rental. They are building rental. And $2.5 billion going into that. That $2.5 billion can go into housing, schools, that there are not enough schools, not enough hospitals, and roads, and there is a lot of other things. I mean, this is taxpayers' money. Premier EB is not putting money out of his pocket, so to talk to them to say, vote for me, I'm getting very popular and I'll get in next time that this is my money. It's the taxpayers' money, and that's what I have issue with.
Yeah.
There is other needs.
I think the problem is, however, that when you think about, so what has the private market done?
Yes.
And they've really not done much. And in fact, when you look at Ontario and Rob Ford giving up agricultural reserve land, and then like within months, $8 billion worth, right? Unfortunately, the extreme of the opposite is that you don't see the private sector, or the builders, whatever, wanting to actually invest in the long term. So they balk at that kind of investment. Why would I build homes, right? That have to be for lower, income individuals, right? Even if they're families. I think people hopefully are waking up to the fact that when we say poverty, it's not just the homeless or what you think is homeless. We're talking about professionals, working class individuals, even those who live in poverty, like children, have one full-time working parent, at least, right? So we are at a very different kind of structure here. I do think the government has to step in at this point. Yes, it's a lot of money, but I also see this. At the root of a lot of our other issues, healthcare, education, etc., is the shortage. And the fact that most people cannot afford to live here means they go, right? Or they don't even try, right, to actually stay here. I know many teacher friends who have left, right? You even see, like, again, very professional people leaving the province. So I think, unfortunately, it's not the perfect solution by any means. You're right, it's rentals, right, etc. But if we don't try something here, then we are going to be so much worse in every other category. And as we know, healthcare is healthcare. When people are dying, when people can't get care, can you imagine what the government's going to have to do, right? It's going to be even more expensive as it is now, where so much of our dollar already goes to that. I do think from like a frontline worker perspective, if my students can have stability and their families know that they have a place to go at night and that it's long term. I've seen families have to move outside of Surrey just to afford to live, and their kids' grades go down, right? They have a hard time readjusting. I do think at least a rental property is something. I do think I'm very critical though of the private sector. We just want to be the richest place in the world. We want all of our homes to be worth $1 million plus. We want to double our investment when we sell our homes. What do you think's going to happen? What do you think's going to happen? So the government can't solve all these things. As a taxpayer, I'm okay with these investments being made. And hopefully there is private sector that wakes up and goes, wait a minute, we're not building something that's sustainable here. You know, when I look at all the buildings that are coming up around me, I really wonder who can afford these.
Yes.
Right? And that's always a question I have in my mind. So no doubt it's a big investment, but we know there are ways to waste that money as well. And I do think somehow there's a bit of an effect there that will impact healthcare and education and other priorities in ways that will be beneficial. I'm not saying it solves those other problems, but it's at least a start. Right?
Well, he started rent to own. That
Yeah.
was his terminology.
Yeah.
It will start as a rental, and then it will be rent to own. And it gives people hope that at least somebody's stepping in this world of expensive groceries being marked up.
Yeah.
I mean, every cent counts. So, you know, it's not, a lot of people are thinking just because he's going into an election, this is what he's proposing and all. But I think he sees the need where we all see there is a need.
Yeah, one bedroom is about 3,000 or 2,900 in Vancouver. Two bedroom is about 3,800. So, I mean, like I say, the rent is really expensive and really high. When these same bedrooms, they haven't changed anything. They used to be going for $1,500 or $1,800. But people, the owners, they think that there is money to be made, and that's how they jacked up the rent. Is not just Vancouver only, in Surrey
In
too.
Surrey
Surrey
too,
too.
yes.
Yeah, the places that used to go for $500, they are $2,200, same place. And I know people lived in there for they are paying about $1,900.
All of a sudden, their rent goes way up because with the owners want to catch up to the market value.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
you pay up or you go because the rental agreement, how
Yes,
much you can,
it's 3% this
yeah,
year.
how much you can hike up has been demolished last time, and now it's up to the owner.
So let's move on to the next thing, which is the healthcare. Minister Adrian Dix says that now the doctors used to be 1 million people living in BC were without the family doctors. Now he claims that 700 doctors have been hired. So the numbers came down from 1 million to about 800,000 people don't have any doctors. But I'm just questioning, where are these doctors coming from? I mean, how is he counting those doctors that we find out all of a sudden 800,000? 800,000 people, still a lot of people without the doctors, without family doctors. But these doctors, they went from, people told me they went from their own practice to this new billing system that they have put
New
in.
structure.
Yeah, new structure. So it's not like new doctors are coming in, same doctors have gone under different programs.
They've just rotated within the system
Yes.
to accommodate people who don't have doctors and will be, well, you know, if it's one way to solve the solution, see, I find what the NDP government is doing, it's trying to find solutions for the people. That solutions weren't there. If they had to work around the system, that's what they're doing. They're working around the system to find solutions. So at least, you know, they can say when their time is up, when the 4 years is up, say, you know, we did this, we're trying to do this, we're trying to. But most of the solutions are working. Even if it's in a roundabout way, it gives, like, people who have not had doctors are appreciative of it. And are finding that, okay, at least, I mean, again I say, at least they think somebody's listening, somebody's trying to give us a solution. But I don't know in the long term, what is the long-term plan about these structure, about, you know, how doctors are going to get paid. Maybe after the election, if a new government comes, or if this government is the same government that wins, then they probably will do something different and look at it in a more long-term version. Then at the moment, it is a short-term quick fix. for the people, and they want to keep it that way. And probably when they win the next election, they'll bring a long-term fix to it, and probably structure it out where it is more accountable, more visible to people as how it is being laid out.
Yeah, I think, we use the term triage, right? Like, so this is triage mode. Obviously, I think with the removal of some of the restrictions of foreign doctors and foreign licensing, obviously that's going to shift. So people who already live here, who happen to have those degrees or are close to completing those, now are entering the system. That doesn't surprise me that that's what happened, is that just existing doctors just kind of switched into a different structure. It takes, 14 years to have like a fully accredited, all of that doctor. There's no way this is going to be resolved overnight, right? For a number like 800,000. And again, we are seeing healthcare realities of aging populations in a lot of the world. That's another issue. Why are we so stressed? Why do so many of us get heart disease? And like, this is a real problem, right? Like, we are sicker, these generations because of our work. Because of the stress, because of everything that's happening, right? How do you deal with that? I don't know, because it's not going to change. Like, Japan is in the throes of a huge demographic shift, right? And I don't think it's fair to then say like one political cycle can solve that situation. But at the same time, again, we have to look at some of the other solutions out there. Like in Alberta now, they're watching doctors almost get out to the private system, and that's a major call of concern, because now you have these clinics that want to put in a system where you can't even get a doctor, right? Or like, supposedly you can, but then you're in a lineup, right? So I don't want to go that direction either. The problems are intense and extreme, and certainly we need to find a way to do better. But every day, like with my family, with all people, like the fact that we still have our universal, those five principles need to be maintained. And if that takes more money, then it takes more money. I always think when I used to live in Florida, and the billions of dollars Americans spend on something that the government should be supporting, right? So when people say, oh, it's cheaper, no, it's not. It's actually more expensive. It's out of your pocket, and you go bankrupt just because you break a leg, let alone, God forbid, a chronic illness or a long-term illness where now, medications cost hundreds of dollars, for one prescription. So I think it is good that 200,000 people now have access to a doctor. I think we're going to have to be really creative about what these solutions look like. It goes back to, how do we make life more affordable here? And then you will see people more willing to undertake those longer scale careers. And let's treat our doctors right and our nurses right. We're living in a very kind of anti-science kind of time, where nurses are attacked and doctors are, told that they don't know what they're talking about, or, like, rights are being taken away from them in various jurisdictions. I think we have to return to a time where, of course, you want to be critical, get those second opinions, all of that, but our healthcare professionals are there to help us. Let's make their life as easy as possible, because they have to help us.
Because we all gonna need them.
We're all gonna need it. And that's something people don't realize. Everybody, we're all temporary able.
Yeah.
We're all gonna get to a point where we need some sort of service. So we have to make sure that we protect that service.
So you mentioned Alberta, and whatever came to my mind is the Premier's SOGI policies. What she proposed, and she had such a huge backlash. Whatever she's proposing, what's your take? What do you think she's thinking, and where? The people that impact the most are the youth, the children, right? Because she's not talking about SOGI policy, about somebody who's 40 years old or something. She's talking more about dealing poverty and puberty and until they reach 18 years old. So it's impacting the children. So
I just think Alberta is the extreme. In every situation, and she just said, let's treat our doctors and nurses right.
Yeah.
Well, if you go to Alberta, this is, anti-vaccines almost started in Alberta. And everything Alberta wants to become Ottawa. They don't want to, they want a separate state, They think they're above everyone just because they've got oil, right? And so, that premier, anything that comes out from her mouth, I have to say, I shut my ears. Because I don't think whatever she's proposing will land, whether it's for
Support,
Soji
yeah.
or for anti-vaccine or changing the concept of doctors, healthcare. I don't think it will change. But what will change if we have a conservative government in the next election? So I know people who say, we are going to vote for Justin Trudeau just to block the conservative government. So imagine if they have a conservative government in Alberta and they have a marriage. Oh my goodness. I just don't want to think. Over to you. I don't want to think about the consequences that will face Canada. It will be like Trump in US. I'm telling you.
It is undemocratic.
Yeah.
Okay? There's zero consultation.
Yes.
When they say, oh, I know someone, I have someone in my family, I always go, okay, wait a minute, right? That's not how you make policy.
Yes.
Also, I want to make sure people know, there's this great video, I think it was just yesterday, from doctors, from parents, from all kinds of folks speaking and actually dismantling her original video, because there is misinformation there, right? The idea of what puberty blockers are and when they're used, right? So the idea that somehow kids are being changed, given that's not happening. It's literally not happening. So it's really kind of mind-numbingly problematic because you're not talking to someone who's looking at evidence. They're just making this up. And of course, if you tell me, they're taking kids, it sounds like Nazi, right? Nazism, but it's not happening. And again, and I see parents who love their kids, who want to see the best to their kids, having their human rights removed, their access to medical care removed. Even kids who, again, legitimately need these services are now going to have all these barriers in a way. And again, I have to go back to how undemocratic this all is. A good news is that in Saskatchewan, even though that they put in the notwithstanding clause, the courts have ruled that they can still be taken to court for their recent pronouns, Soji, whatever, policies. So I think that's good, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to get this in without the majority of support. I saw Pierre Poilievre note 50% of Canadians agree with this. And I'm like, wait a minute, what are they agreeing to? And secondly, it's 50%, which means there's 50% of other people. And again, I believe everybody can have their opinion, but you need to base it on actual information.
Okay.
And I don't like the fact that original video, again, I love this new video, it takes it apart. Doctors are speaking about each piece. Parents of trans kids are speaking. Parents who are pregnant, right, speaking. Trans individuals speaking. Any policy, anything, whether you agree with it or not, needs consultation, needs legislation, needs debate, needs to be put through properly. And we're in Black History Month.
Yes.
Let's look at Canada. Indigenous rights, Black rights, people of color rights, South Asian folks, they didn't get their rights because the majority wanted it.
Yeah.
BIPOC people, queer people were hated. Right? It took courts, it took intervention to actually get legitimate human rights like voting.
Yes.
Like the right to live in an area, right? The right to go to school. That never happened because the people stood up for it. I'm sorry to say. Look at the history, right?
Yeah.
We assassinated their leaders. Instead of actually giving it. So I sometimes worry about, these people think this. Well, who are these people? Where do they get their information? And at the end of the day, in a country that believes in healthcare, again, trust the doctors, trust the parents making decisions for their family. And for parents who go against other parents,
Yeah.
you need to talk to each other.
Yes.
You need to talk to each other and see that just because one parent parents one way, it doesn't make the other parenting style problematic,
Yeah.
right? It's that it's a different way of being. So it is, for a premier to spout lies
Yeah.
and misinformation on so many different regards. It's a power grab.
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with any policy.
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with children. This is like, we just want to be powerful
Yeah.
and we want to be able to shut down the government, right? At every turn. You don't have to love the government, but our Constitution, our Charter of Rights are supposed to be neutral. They're supposed to be one that protects everyone. So, I'm glad people are fighting back, though. You certainly are seeing the backlash. I think she's still going to go for it. And so now I'm hoping courts, and it's so sad to think that parents who already work hard, who already struggle making ends meet, now have to go to court.
Yes.
And almost go bankrupt trying to fight for their parents' rights.
Yeah.
Like, we need to reclaim that.
Yeah.
Parents' rights? Absolutely parents' rights. All parents' rights.
Yeah.
All children's rights, right? We live in a country where it's not some. It is all.
Everybody.
Yeah.
With that, I'm looking at the clock. We have almost, I didn't give you another chance to even wrap up.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah, so we are almost out of time, but what a healthy debate that we are having. And I think it's something to take it away and think about it. If you don't know enough, I think there's a lot of information. We can do all the research, right? We can find it out for ourselves. What is good, what's not, where do I stand, or where I don't stand, what do I support, what I don't. So it's good to have a dialogue. If not with anybody else, I usually have a dialogue with my own self, and I think that's very healthy to do that. Ask the question and try to find the answer. At least you will get somewhere. Thank you so much for watching Kamila Singh Show.